We did skip one at the beginning. Stop. We had 4 levels that we built the car. The AA level was Buick's building of the engine. The BB level is this area here where we put built the powertrain module. CC level was the assembly in the Van Nuys assembly plant, and then DD is where the car came back to us and we finished it. All right, now there was a certain requirement in order for PASS to be the manufacturer of record that we had to have a certain level of content on the car. Any less, then it had to be a Pontiac. Pontiac, one of the reasons they wanted us to do it is because PASS was responsible for the fuel economy. Whereas if GM got it, then it would affect their fuel economy numbers. So that was one of the political basketball games we were playing at the time. This here, the CC level, so this shows what you can see of it, is the engine and transmission on the hook at the GM assembly plant at Van Nuys. Next. There's another picture of it. Some of you have your broadcast sheets, which was a black and white page that you've seen. That black and white page is here, and that is called the broadcast sheet, if I remember right. And that broadcast sheet said what car it goes into. So I mean, if they checked this and then they checked the body to make sure they were correct before they went to a place called Marriage. The engine transmission assembly went from here to a double pallet assembly. And the first pallet had the engine and transmission mounted to the K member, which is the cross member. The brakes were on it, the shocks were on it, the springs, that whole section from the front and the back, the differential was on it, the torque arm was on it, what else was on that? The shocks, I remember the links for the differential. And what they would do is they went to a place called Marriage on these 2 pallets, and then the body came down and these pallets went up at the same time. So they called that body marriage, and that's the most critical point in the whole assembly. Next. After that, the car came to here and it got aligned. This is called Igor. I don't remember what it stood for. But this is a turbo Trans Am on Igor being aligned, and what it would do is it would actually just force, they left all the strut tower loose and the tie rod ends and stuff, and then they would adjust it, tighten it down, and then gave you a computer printout of the alignment. Next. This one here shows the front of a car after it's got its wheels and tires on, it's been through Igor, it's had the interior put in it. And this is just about at the end of the line, and again, you can't see it in the picture, but you'll see it on the website. There's a girl here, and she's doing the transmission fluid, and what they would do is the transmissions, when they were built in Hydromatic, they would have a certain amount of fluid in there. So in order to make them correct, they filled 5 quarts in, and then they sucked it down to where the dipstick level is supposed to be. And then there's a guy on the other side, and he's putting in the washer fluid and stuff. Like I said, you can't see it very well. Then you'll see the manifest is over here for the broadcast sheet, and then here's the manifest, and it's got some of the other items that the car had on it. And those were in the build records, and I'm trying to get those back right now, and I'll be able to get those for you guys at some point in time. Next. Here's a couple of cars at Van Nuys. They're in the inspection after the fluid fill area. Next. On every single one of the cars, we had a guy that worked for us who was an ex-employee of Van Nuys. He was retired, and he worked at this separate little workstation behind the building outside. And what he would do is he would check every single car to make sure it was built right. And if it was not built right, it went back into, what do they call it, final repair. And by the time that your project was over, every single car went through final repair because there was a number of things wrong, so they made them check them. An addendum to what Bill said on the warranty, after the Trans Am, I handled the service and warranty for not only the Trans Ams, but the Cyclones and Typhoons. The report came back a few years later that not only was the Trans Am better, but they got so used to the white cars going through final inspection and having to make them right, that the white Trans Ams, the stock ones, had 25% of the warranty cost the colored cars did. So that's next. These pictures are, I mean, you can't see them here, but when you see these pictures on the internet, you'll see that there's just the air meter is just mounted to the turbocharger as well. Another picture of the inspection area behind the plant. Next. And this is the cars that would come over to our plant, the City of Industry, on car haulers. They would drop off the ones that were incomplete, and then they would pick up the ones that were completed, and then those went back into the distribution center that was behind the Van Nuys assembly line. So it was, you know, we never slowed down any of the deliveries by doing our end of the bargain. Next. And some more pictures. I figured you guys wanted to see any pictures I had, so I put them all on. Yeah. There's another car coming off, and you can tell this one's incomplete because there's no white bird in the taillights. The other thing is all the shipping stuff was left on the cars when we finished the cars at our place. We even had all of the plastic fender covers and stuff, so we wouldn't damage the cars when they were at our place. Next. Every car we had a bunch of copies of this piece of paper, and our biggest fear was that one of the incomplete cars would end up at a dealership. So we threw this in every single car. It says this car must be shipped to Pass Inc., City of Industry. And believe it or not, it worked. I think only one got out. We had to have it shipped back. There's another picture of the same thing. Here's an overview of the City of Industry assembly. And you can see the engine assembly line here. You can see some of the pallets for the engines back here. The cars going, you see the car on the lift there. The cars going this way are the ones coming in for work. The ones that are going toward the back door are the ones going out. The one on the lift that was a station that was after the chassis dyno, and we had written up an inspection process for the whole underside of the car in case it got missed at Van Nuys and it got missed in the chassis dyno. Next. This is the other half of that same picture from standing on top of the offices. Next. This picture is from the back of the building. These cars are ready to be shipped. Back here, there's a partition, and that's where the chassis dyno was. And again, the engines are being built over here. This is the chassis dyno. I got hooked up with Sun Machines, and we put every single car on this Sun machine, and it did a cylinder dropout test. And what it was is there was an interface that hooked up to the coil module, and it would drop out one cylinder at a time, and then you measured the amount of RPM drop to see if there was a dead cylinder. If there was, the car came off and we fixed it. Let's see what else. We didn't check much else on the chassis dyno other than the making sure there was no codes, making sure the startup was right. We tried to do shifts on the on the chassis dyno. That wasn't very consistent. The thing that we did find a lot was there's a ground over by your battery up on the inner fender well there, and if that's disconnected, the fans didn't work, and that showed up. Every time we found that, we fixed it. Next. Another picture of the assembly plant. And we're back to square one.
Okay, so which one do you want next?
Are the transmissions handmade for these cars? Are the transmissions handmade?
Yeah, the transmissions were made specifically for this car. The changes were as they put,
handmade?
Yes.
A symbol, like a signature or something?
Well, actually, I was just talking to somebody here, and he said the valve body plate that's on the bottom when you pull the pan off actually says what it's in 20 TA or something on it. So you can tell. But they changed the valving on it. The idea was to make it shift very stiff. You don't want to slip the trams like the Cyclones, Typhoons are the same way. And we got some complaints about how stiff they shift, but if you don't, if you slip the clutches, you'll burn them. So we needed to just shift really hard.
Which one do you want next? Testing?
The HO.
Pilot for HO?
Where'd Bill go?
The whole project.
Bill!
individually checked over?
100% checked. Every car went across the dyno. Every car had an inspection after vandalized. Every car went on underbody inspection. And then later, because I wasn't happy with the transmission shifts, I set up a test plan that the guys were supposed to drive in the back behind the building and get them to shift. They had to shift a certain way or they couldn't go. Here's your baby. That's the HO car that we were talking about.
Oh, would you talk about that a little bit?
Go right ahead. These are the pictures that...
After the picture shows quite neat.
Oh, well, that's hard. We got to hook the projector back.
There's our Mr. Jason.
But anyway, this is the same car. If you want to just look at the pictures. These pictures I got off of one of the Turbo Trans Am websites. This car is in the GM Heritage Museum. And the person, I don't remember who it was, that put the pictures up there couldn't figure out what the car was. And this car is something that we built at Prototype Automotive to represent Pontiac at some of the top speed shootouts. And Bill built the engine for it. And then I got the pleasure of putting it together and trying to make it run, and I'll let Bill do the rest.
Well, by the time we got in production, I was pretty busy at the engine plant just trying to help them make it, because our management, we didn't have exactly a formal build sheets on this, so we had to make those, and we had to make sure that some of the stuff happened. And I didn't do much. All the rest of the people that passed and Pontiac pretty much did all the production. And Mr. Goat called me up one day and he says, "Hey Bill," and he says, "You still got any parts left?" I said, "Well, I don't know," because we were getting down towards the end of it, and we used up almost, when we got done running them, we were done, because that whole engine machining line, we're going to take out and turn the machines off, get rid of them, and then convert some of them over to the new 3800. And he says, "Well, we just got asked by Motor Trend magazine to come to a shootout. They didn't, a high-speed shootout, and they didn't think of us until just today. And because we just don't usually have something fast enough, they had Corvettes, and they're going to have some Porsches and a Ferrari and some of this stuff. And they thought, well, we got this pace car, and it's pretty fast. Would you guys like to participate?" He says, "Oh yeah, we're going to participate." He said, "Well, what have you got?" I said, "I really don't know." So I hung up and I ran downstairs. And at the end of the line, we had 3 blocks and 3 cranks left. That's all we had, so I took them and had a guy help me, and we put them on a pallet, and we got them in the back. And I went back on the tone, and I said, "That's all we have." And we had a lot of heads and other stuff there at pass. And I said, "Well, I think we got enough to build one with." He said, "Well, bring it down." So I took it down there, and he says, "Well, here's the real story. We only got less than 2 weeks to do this." I said, "What do you mean we got 2 weeks?" "Well, what do you think we're going to do?" And me being a drag racer, some of the times when they had a little downtime in the dyno, I wanted to build one of these for NHRA stock eliminator competition. And we filled up a combination, but the truth was, we didn't think we had enough power to beat the 350 Chevys at the time. That's exactly what I was running myself in Camaro, and I knew what it made, and we really didn't quite have enough power. So we put everything we knew into that, and Billy Briggs, their engine man, he was holding the block. We didn't want to use stock cast pistons, so we went down to one of the auto parts stores and we got some TRW forged pistons. We used a production crank, production rods. We put these forged pistons in there, and then Bertie, the cylinder head man at Pass, his real name's, why you call him Bertie, was his real name's Richard Smitling, and he didn't like going by that, so his name. But he's done a lot of work since, and even worked on the Ford Pro Stock engines and NASCAR stuff. He's very good. So we just did what we knew to the heads. I said, "Look, we got to have a set of heads," and we put a little bit bigger TRW valve what would fit in there. I think we had 1.75s, and we could put 1.77s